If your plan is to come to Canada to study as a student, then these are 5 points that you have to take note of to make sure that at least you set yourself up for success and don't end up regretting the decision in the long run. The truth is, many students wait till they land in trouble before they start learning the truth about these things when they arrive in Canada. So my general advice to anybody is to make sure to stay away from anything that will at least compromise their status as a student when they arrive in Canada. Because even though the study permit route is the easiest way to get yourself to permanent residency, especially when you are older, it is easier to also compromise your status because there's a lot of temptation along that route. The first thing that you have to take note of is to study at a designated learning institution and also study a program that is eligible for postgraduate work permits. That's PGWP. I say this because a lot of people make the mistake of picking an institution that's not DLI or a program that's not eligible for postgraduate work permit because they allow agents to steer them away from most of these courses to other ones that they feel might be cheaper without checking whether it's DLI or even is eligible for postgraduate work permit. So they pick these wrong courses only to land in Canada and find out that they are not eligible for postgraduate work permit. So they have to now reinvent the wheel and start all over again with a new course to be eligible for postgraduate work permit. They only find out they have been duped only when they land in Canada, and maybe during orientation, the school tells them that, okay, this program is not eligible for postgraduate work permits. That's when they have to start running around looking for new courses. So my advice is to make sure you do your research before anybody steers you away from a program that's not postgraduate work permit eligible or to an institution that's not DLI. And I will leave a link in the description column for you if you need to check on the institution that maybe you are planning to apply to see whether it's DLI. And you can also be able to check whether the courses that you plan to study is at least eligible for postgraduate work permit. There are two things that you have to take note of. As much as we see that students get open work permits after graduation, for you to qualify for any of that, first, the institution that you are going to has to be a DLI. And secondly, the program that you are studying must be eligible for postgraduate work permits. So it's possible that you go to a school that's a DLI, but the course that you might be doing is not postgraduate work permit eligible. Or the school that you are going to is not even a DLI. In that case, that means the courses that they are offering are not eligible for postgraduate work permits. So you can use the link that I'm leaving in the description column to check on your school. And one thing that I also advise students to do is, if you are not sure whether the school you are going to is a DLI or it is even offering a course that's postgraduate work permit eligible, just send an email to the school and ask these questions, and they will get back to you with the information that you need to help you make the decision before you go ahead to pay for your tuition fees. And my other advice is, do not listen to agents who promise to help you find a job post-graduation and advise you to go to institutions that are not DLI or do a course that is not PGWP eligible. Some of these guys will go further to tell you that they will sponsor you to find a job post-graduation. My point is, why go through all this risk and just hope that somebody else will do his part to help you in the long run, when you can do the right thing right from the word go and set yourself up for success so that you will receive your postgraduate work permit and go out there and be able to apply to any job on the job market post-graduation. So even if the agent is promising that they are going to sponsor you to get an open work permit post-graduation, it might be a risk that, for me, I don't think it's worth taking. After going through a school for 2 years, now you are hoping that that agent will now go ahead and sponsor you. His mind can change within that 2 years, or things might change post that 2-year period that you are in school. So just pick a course that's PGWP eligible in a school that's a DLI, so that you have all your eggs not in one basket, but at least everything is under your control post-graduation. Because trust me, It is not as easy as sometimes they make it look about them helping you to get an open work permit post-graduation. So stay away from all that stress. Secondly, plan to start working only when school starts. Please and please here, have some money on hand before you land in Canada as an international student, because there will be some expenses that you need to pay for as soon as you land here. Don't arrive empty-handed, because trust me, you need that soft landing when you land in Canada to be able to start your journey on the right footing. Most people have done it the wrong way, and they will tell you that, oh, I did it this way, you can also do it the same way. What they don't do is they don't tell you the stress they went through and the trouble they went through. They only show you the end of the journey, not what they went through during the journey. And the truth is, you can accomplish things more easily if you have some money on hand to spend. And things that you might end up spending on will be things like accommodation, transportation, expenses, especially when you land in winter, getting new clothing, food, and all those things. Those are things that you can't do without. And if you land without any money to spend, you will find yourself frustrated, and sometimes you end up getting depressed because you realize that it's not the land of milk and honey that people spoke to you about. So have some money on hand at least before your program starts, because you are only eligible to work when your program starts. Anything that you do before that period will end up being illegal and can land you in trouble. So at least have a plan that you will only work when your school starts. If you get here and you are lucky enough to find a job earlier, fine, but at least plan your life that you can only work after school starts. You cannot, and I stress here, cannot legally work if you arrive before your program starts with the intention that I want to hustle and make some money before my program starts so that I can afford to pay my tuition fee and other expenses. It will be a risky move to at least make. I know this is hard to hear, but trust me, if you disobey the law, there can be some severe repercussions. Just because somebody did it and it worked for him doesn't mean that you might be able to go through it and not have any repercussions. And I advise that you have to keep yourself updated by at least reading the IRCC website on the requirements that you need to at least have before you can start working as an international student, so that you will not be depending on what somebody else is saying, but at least you will be having first-hand information of everything that you need to at least work in Canada. Additionally, it is less stressful when the work you are doing is to save and at least pay for expenses in the future and not to pay for expenses that you are currently incurring. That's why I always advise that worst case scenario, you can borrow money to pay for your tuition and other things before you arrive in Canada. So then now you can be working to pay off those debts that you have, instead of hoping that when you land, you'll be working and paying for those expenses whilst you are in the country. And generally, my advice is to have enough money to cover at least the first 4 months of your stay in Canada. That's about your first semester in Canada. That gives you enough time to at least understand the system, understand how things work, find a job that you are comfortable with, and at least start making some money, so that at least you are not under any stress to go running around to look for a job, when your focus should be to at least be integrating and at least understanding the educational system and the courses that you sign up for before you jump onto the job market. And why is this crucial? Trust me, the burden lessens if you have paid off your tuition fee even before you land in Canada. That's why sometimes they ask you to at least pay off part of your tuition fee. Besides showing commitment that you'll be coming for the course, at least they know it takes some burden off your shoulder of having to at least work to pay for your tuition fee when you are in Canada, the first couple of months or weeks that you are supposed to be at least be on campus to study. So prepare to avoid being stranded. Thirdly, how many hours can you work as an international student? On this one, most students end up getting it wrong because things are changing and always keep evolving. Before November 15th, 2022, international students could only work up to 20 hours during the semester, and they were allowed to work unlimited hours during semester breaks and during the holidays, they were allowed to work full-time because there were no studies and they were not supposed to be in class. So as long as their status as a student exists before or post that period, they are able to work unlimited hours during those semester breaks. However, with the new regulations that IRCC introduced, students were allowed to work unlimited hours even during school time. That's during the time when schools are supposed to be in session, and the same thing will apply during the school breaks. And this new policy or regulation was supposed to be in effect between that 15th of November all the way to 31st of December 2022. However, this temporary change only applies to international students who had a valid study permit application submitted by October 7th, 2022. So if your application came in after this period, you might not end up being qualified for at least that unlimited working hours. And I've seen and heard a lot of students get to the airport because they submitted their applications after that period, and they are surprised that there are restrictions that are put on their working hours compared to those who were already in Canada or those who submitted their application before that period. So this is something that you have to take note. If you are submitting your application post 7th October 2022, it's possible that you will not be eligible to have that unlimited hours to work as compared to others who are already in Canada or submitted the application before the 7th of October. So take note of this. But if you decide to work on campus, then you'll be able to at least work unlimited hours even during school period, even if you submitted your application post 7th October 2022. On the IRCC website, you can get more information about this. So my advice is to at least do the research and arm yourself before you end up in Canada. Don't get here with the hope that you'll be getting unlimited hours, only to get to the border and find out that there is restriction on the number of hours that you can work. So do your research and plan accordingly if it applies to you. And also, don't fall to the temptation to abuse this opportunity. If you find out that you are supposed to work only 20 hours, don't be tempted to do more than that, because if you get caught, the repercussions can end up being severe. They might not catch you now, but trust me, during your permanent resident application, it might show up, or even during your citizenship application, it might show up. And depending on the agent working on your application, trust me, they might ask you for explanation, and this can cost you in the long run. The fourth point is changing school or program after arriving in Canada. Yes, after arriving in Canada, you can still change your course or change your program. Even after you've landed, there's an option to at least defer your course if you meet some particular conditions that the school will set up for you. However, keep in mind that if your wish is to work first and start school later, that excuse will not be reason enough for the school to allow you to defer or change your program. So that's something that you have to take note of. And I keep stressing this, you can only start working once your program has started. So if you defer your program to start working, guess what? You are not a student, so you are not qualified to at least start working. So any work you are doing during that period will be illegal. My advice is, if you have any plans of changing school, only change your school or program after you have arrived in Canada. This will imply that you have to be actively seeking for your second admission even before you fly out to Canada. Make sure you have that second admission in hand. That way, as soon as you land, you get the option of at least changing over to that second course without having to now land in Canada and start applying for new school, which might take a couple of months. And during that period, if you have already deferred your first course, you'll be caught stranded between two courses. So basically, you are not a student. You have to wait for the second admission to come in before you can at least move on to the second school. But if you have the second admission in hand, as soon as you arrive, now you can quickly change to that course and start that one quickly so that you can at least work as a student or go ahead and be a student to meet the necessary requirement that's set out for you. Additionally, you are supposed to notify the IRCC through their portal anytime you change school or change program, so that they know what program that at least you are studying on now. Because guess what? The schools are supposed to notify IRCC of all current students and their progress or any changes that happens accordingly. So the moment you change school, you are supposed to notify IRCC of this change. And one thing that you have to also take note of here is, if your study permit has already been approved, but you have not arrived in Canada yet, and you decide to change the school that you are supposed to attend, you are required to now reapply for a new study permit using the new school that you've gotten admission for. So basically, you are going to go through the whole application process again just because you have changed your school. That is why I always advise that if you're already approved, the best option will be to get your second admission. Now, when you land in Canada, you can go ahead and at least change the school, because now you are in country and you don't have to now reapply for a new study permit using your new school's admission. So avoid this as much as possible. The situation where you are approved and you try to change schools even before you land in Canada. And if you are deferring the start of your program, that is, maybe you are supposed to start in the winter semester, but you decide, I want to defer to the spring semester or the fall semester, and you have already arrived in Canada, your school is supposed to approve your justification for deferring the program. This is important because as an international student, you have to always be enrolled in class and be actively going to school as a student. But also note that you can request a leave from your school that is not more than 150 days. And a student can request for leave for a variety of reasons. So make sure that your reasons or justifications can hold water before you decide to take this action. Point number 5, know when to renew, extend, or change your status as an international student. This is quite crucial. As an international student, you might need to extend your study permit, renew your passport, renew your visa, or even change your status during your time in Canada to be able to have valid documents that will allow you to stay in the country. And at this point, I will try to differentiate between the two here. Your study permit is your status in Canada. The visa that they issue to you is what will allow you to enter the country and exit the country. So if your visa expires, but your study permit has not expired, you can still be in the country. But if you decide to leave the country, you will now need a visa to enter the country again. That is why you need to make sure that all these two are always valid at every given time, so that you have the option to exit and enter the country at every given time. The law mandates that as an international student, you maintain a valid status at every given time. And they advise that you apply for an extension to your visa or study permit at least 30 days before it expires. This is to give you enough time to at least apply to renew your visa or your study permit, just to make sure that you can maintain your status as a student during that period. Because within that 30-day period, you can submit and get approval for your study permit extension or possibly your visa renewal. If becoming a permanent resident is something that you are interested in, my advice is it is never too early to start planning ahead. Remember that as a bearer of a study permit, you are only a temporary resident in Canada. There is a long way to go. Don't let any short-term gains rob you of your long-term benefits in the long run in Canada. So don't take any stupid risks if your plan is to be a permanent resident here in Canada. Trust me, IRCC will not say anything if you start breaking the rules now that you are a temporary resident. But trust me, they'll be waiting for you at the end of the road, where they will now stretch you to the limits. There's been times where people get to permanent residence and find out that some of the mistakes that they made whilst they were temporary resident holders has followed them all the way. Because trust me, it is difficult to at least erase paper trails of some of these things. As much as you try to cheat the system, you will leave a record somewhere that somebody might end up finding. My best wishes to you if your plan is to come to Canada and at least study to be a student and find your way to permanent residence and finally to become a citizen. Until the next video, I'll catch you. And if you want to connect with me, there's always a link in the description column that you can use to maybe book 30 minutes one-on-one conversation with me. And if you need help to maybe leverage on my personal experience, there's that option too for you that you can use, where I'll help you using my experience to maybe review your documents. You go through it together and see how best you can package your application to get a best decision out of it. But if you need a professional help, you can connect with me and I'll link you up with any immigration agent who will help you through the process. Thank you. Till the next video, catch you.